Amidst a windstorm, there sits a lone candle that remains untouched, enduring a storm of progress, so to speak, a hurricane of innovation and a flurry of rationalization. Despite such harsh conditions, the candle of faith and superstition, of gods and stars, remains burning still. It is irrelevant to this candle how much time has passed, how unnecessary it is made to feel, or how much the environment around it continues to blow at it. The candle will just not die. Astonishing, frustrating, impressive. This is the modern miracle. Though in this scientifically dominated day, religion and all its properties remain alive and well in all major societies, it persists in spite of a world that seemingly no longer needs it. A world that, in the modern day, prioritizes rationalization and progress above all else. Considering the scope of this fact, it is only concludable that a vast array of historical and societal factors must be at play here, and have been for such a long time that they remain buried in our collective consciousness. The question, in summary, is, why do cultures and societies continue to practice religion in an era of modern advancement and rationality? What is so appealing about religion that keeps them hanging on? What are people missing in their lives that is so great that not even science can satisfy this hunger? By the end of this analysis, we shall have found some sort of answer to the modern miracle. To even begin answering a question of this caliber, I think it's best that we understand where it all began. Based upon the conclusions of countless historians, scholars, and theologians, it is clear that religion and spirituality emerged as a direct result of the growth of the human brain. Homo sapiens could advance further because of their newly expanding cognitive abilities, which aided them in dominating their new environment. The agricultural innovations of the Neolithic period also now permitted them more free time to think more deeply and about concepts larger than themselves. Now, their brains were no longer focused on just survival alone. They now had the capacity to think of other things. Why they are here, where did they come from, what is good to them, and what is evil to them. As performer and educator Andrea Olson describes it, three-dimensional thinking. The basic characteristic of our species, Homo sapiens, wise man, is the increased capacity of the brain. Our physiological capabilities were matched by our capacity for three-dimensional thought in the past, present, future. We are able to reflect on where we have been, contemplate where we are, and plan where we are going. This capacity for reflection, planning, and manipulation of our environment brings the responsibility of choice. The new, eager, and introspective brains resulted in humans trying to make sense of themselves and the world around them. Considering this historical blueprint provided, my research has compiled three key reasons and consequences to the development of faith in human society. 1. Explanation of natural or mortal phenomenon. 2. Cultural values. And 3. Societal organization. Firstly, religion was used as a graspable way of making sense of the wild attributes of the natural world. When this is said, one refers to not just phenomena such as weather, disasters, or even natural creations, but also in terms of individual states of being, chiefly a human's mortality. So a major reason why religion began and why it still remains solid in the modern day can be sort of attributed to this simple basis, that human beings desire comfort, and they desire an escape from things that they do not understand. The biggest example is death, the greatest unknown. It is no secret that no one knows for certain what happens when people die. which means there is an unpredictability and an unknown, leading to a primal panic that breeds comforting creativity. Now, comforting creativity is a concept I created for the purpose of this video analysis, but it means it's what humans use to fill the blanks in their knowledge when they're fearful of the uncertain. And as we know, humans are very creative animals, and with the help of those big brains and more time to think of things beyond survival, they came to their own conclusions about their planet and the universe. And if these ideals are passed on from generation to generation, it can be hard to let go if one day a scientific discovery demands that a person change what is deeply ingrained in their understanding, that being their generational religion. Religion creates a detailed and sort of easy to understand plan for everything that happens in a scary state such as death, giving people peace in the belief that they are safe in death and that their loved ones are as well, which relieves their emotional strain. In summary, religion persists because human beings will almost always be more attracted to a simpler and comforting answer rather than a complex and even bleak one that science would give them thousands of years later. As American author and critic H.L. Mencken put it, "For every complex human problem, there is an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong." And not to say that religious conclusions are necessarily wrong. I mean, nobody knows. Not even scientific theories on something as unknown as death can be truly falsified by a living person. This fact alone proves that point even further. That a complex problem, if it is a source of anxiety and with no clear answer given, will encourage a simple and happy mental attachment to keep the wild mind at ease. Moving on. The second major reason relating to the need for religion is the invention of values, culturally. Well, this is very broad. It refers to the fact that most societies in the world were structured based upon religious principles or superstitions. And this begins with a culture's norms and values. How a cultural group determines right from wrong is based upon their unique judgment that is influenced by the collective, unspoken law of the people. It could go as far as religious tales of creatures haunting a person if they stole something, or even just a society considering swearing to be taboo. Essentially, religion began almost as a society's moral glue, so to speak, building off the laws of nature and organizing them strictly. This is how a clear directive of values that gave people a spiritual toolbox to organize their natural morality, leading to, in a way, a more civilized conduct among members of the culture. Finally, the third and perhaps most critical of all these aspects when discussing religion's modern-day life is its role in societal organization. In sociologist Émile Durkheim's book, Les Suicides, he describes the current state that modern society finds itself in. The height of industry, modernization, and advanced productivity. He claims that mental health, as the world knows it today, in terms of depression, dread, and suicidal tendencies in people, are on the rise in industrial societies. He argues that human beings require a communal aspect to their day-to-day lives, but industrialization makes it so that the individual is prioritized too deeply, leaving them with a sense of loneliness. The factory makes them feel like a cog in the machine rather than a valued member of a community working towards a goal. There is now so much responsibility placed on the individual that both success and failure becomes their fault. With rationalization pushed, Durkheim believed that humans drifted away from community institutions like religion in society that gave them a deep sense of belonging. Durkheim, though an atheist himself apparently, admired the communal and belonging aspects that religion brought, along with the way that people create a sense of belonging and togetherness through religion. It is a concept later developed upon by the 14th Dalai Lama, who called it a Buddhist principle of emptiness, in which human beings are naturally not their own individuals and are instead only made real by their interactions and support of family and community. Their duties are solely inspired by the common goals, morals, and spiritual needs of a society. In a way, Durkheim too felt that humans needed just a little bit of balanced faith in their lives in the modern day as a source of interpersonal and familial healing. Science is incredible, but can someone develop an interpersonal or communal reliance on it? Can people be brought together as a family with science? Can science make one feel like they belong? Now, do remember, progress is essential. Yet it is clear that progress must advance by going hand in hand with traditional introspection and kinship. Only then shall humanity grow, but not lose that magic which makes them so human. We must, as the School of Life educators put it, discover the right balance between freedom and solidarity. Though Durkheim's concerns suggest that there is indeed a significant loss of religious and communal values in modern societies, this all being due to the pushings of, what was stated before, rationalism and scientific discovery being pushed. Sort of what another social scientist, Max Weber, describes as the disenchantment of the world. Modern cultures that chose industrialization and practicality above all else tended to drift away from religious attachments, now attributing achievements and success to a person's work ethic and efficiency rather than any sort of divine choice. People were taught that they won based on their independent and labor merit, rather than with the help of a mystical power. Most people go on in their lives nowadays with this notion that there are no miracles, that all achievement is based solely on hard work alone. Though, if we are on the topic of Durkheim's idea of faith, one could argue that a loss of purpose or directive can come about if their job seems non-essential or meaningless to their civilization, as if there's no point. Whereas someone, for example, in a more traditional culture doing work that is perhaps even more insignificant in the long term can find great pride in their work. They feel their importance in the society since it is seen as a chosen position of God, or they're doing God's work, or perhaps aided by spiritual forces when doing their work. Now, expanding upon this in a more familiar lens, Western nations have moved heavily in the direction of national secularism to facilitate a workforce and society that is progressing constantly and not held back with any sort of superstition. While this may not be so explicit, it is obvious that this ideal cultural state that is favored to occur is essentially secularism. That's the favored cultural state, the ideal. People now generally think of ones who are still engrossed in spiritual beliefs or heavily religious as hillbillies, hicks, conservatives, or uneducated. This is why we see that religion in society is kind of seen as an example of low culture now. If you are a very deeply religious person, like what I said, you're seen as more of a hick, you're seen as uneducated, you're seen as backwards. Whereas sort of in society, it's seen as the rich, liberal, and educated, the bobos, so to speak, who are atheist and agnostic and don't bother with this kind of religion and just think of progress and practicality. Globally, one might see countries that emphasize religion as underdeveloped or authoritarian or stuck, such as how most Americans view nations in Asia, the Middle East, or Africa. Though they neglect much larger factors that could contribute to societal issues in these countries and often forget to see those cultures from their respective points of view, using cultural relativism. On a micro level, this ethnocentric mentality continues. For example, it almost seems as if religion is more of a barrier to employers, as they have accepted the rationalist view that faith slows things down, or perhaps they hold a stubbornness to their own religious values and beliefs, sort of leading them to misunderstand other diverse acts. This goes all the way back to the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution, and you see the kind of misunderstandings and cruelness of employers and bosses. But even nowadays, this is kind of an issue, as we see with the rise of immigration and whatnot. and different faiths being introduced to countries like Canada. Ethnocentrism, rather, takes its toll greatly on how people with the privilege in the society treat the underprivileged in terms of what they believe and what they require in terms of their belief sets. So, for example, a white agnostic employer firing a Muslim employee since they require extra time during work hours to do their daily Muslim prayer. Building off of this, religion can also be seen now, in a negative light as something that's scary to people that have had negative experiences with it growing up. In undemocratic theocracies or trauma from an upbringing in a dubious religious organization like some sort of cult. A more widespread view is inspired by the historically accurate accusations of homophobia, racism, classism, financial corruption, and genocide put in place under the guise of the religious mission from places like churches. Residential schools in Canada that were mainly operated by the Protestant and Catholic churches are a pretty familiar national example. This negative reputation also contributes to newer generations, sort of like what Max Weber was alluding to, the newer generations slowly disenchanting themselves from organized religion. But here we are, back at the candle analogy. Even under such discouraging circumstances, the flame of religion is stubborn. Even in terms of today's youth, for example, who are often seen as a spearheading force for global secularism and progress, have seemed to widely adopt spiritualistic and faithful practices nowadays. What I mean by this is that these new ways are often a holistic set of beliefs that exist to kind of actively step away from the church as a symbol of religion and making it its own independent thing. So essentially, it's separate from the church, but it's still satisfying this human need for religion. So not so much organized religion, but instead more pagan beliefs have taken center stage. According to Research Co., for example, 1 in 5, or 20% of Canadian youth, proudly claim that they believe in zodiac signs and astrology. For example, here is an Instagram account followed by almost 200,000 people, notifying them daily of their horoscope predictions. I mean, here's mine for Wednesday, October 4th for a Virgo. And it just goes on, and this is something clearly a lot of people rely on in some sort of holistic sense. Another kind of topical example of something that the youth of today are kind of jumping onto are crystals and gemstones as sources of mental and emotional healing. I mean, this right here is an amethyst bracelet, and that many believe it kind of helps one relieve their anxiety, their irritability, among other benefits. Now, all of this, whatever format it communicates in, however unique or perhaps different from the modern cultural narrative it is in terms of what we're used to, it signifies that faith does not die, but is instead reshaped as humanity progresses. All because humans undoubtedly require whatever it is that religion provides to them psychologically. To conclude, we see that the human brain, while a marvel, is flawed. It needs mental comfort to live life with a clear purpose and with moral integrity, which explains how religion stays alive throughout all of human history. The point of this analysis is not to preach or even to downplay, but instead be a chance for understanding and discovery of why people rely on something seemingly so outdated and unnecessary. Now, 2 major questions shall be posed to you for discussion. 1. If we can reach a healthy balance of scientific fact and embracing of a spiritual peace of mind, is society better off with some sort of religion or spirituality guiding it? And 2, religious institutions like the Catholic Church, for example, are now widely denounced due to their troubling history of abuse, corruption, and genocide. Can a religion ever move on from such a bad legacy? Or is a more unorganized, churchless approach to faith a better way to go? Thank you.